I am delighted to welcome our alumni speaker for today's talk, Neveen Galal, who will be sharing her insights into what it takes to be a successful leader. Today's event is also part of the University of Westminster's International Women's Day celebration. Since completing her legal practice postgraduate diploma at Westminster in 2002, Neveen has become an award-winning immigration human rights lawyer who has founded her own law firm, Amnesty Solicitors, where she has worked since 2015. Her career has focused on immigration, refugee and human rights law, representing unaccompanied asylum-seeking children and victims of trafficking and slavery. Prior to starting Amnesty Solicitors, she was promoted to head of department at Duncan Lewis Solicitors within 3 years of graduating and became a director and board member just 1 year later. This led to Neveen being recognised in Who's Who of Britain's young business elite for being one of the youngest directors of a multi-million-pound company. Neveen has also won the Outstanding Achievement Award as part of the Westminster Alumni Awards in 2021. During this talk, Neveen will explain how she developed her own leadership style and how she planned her own career path to reach a senior level in the legal sector in such a small amount of time.
Thank you ever so much, Joy, for that wonderfully kind introduction there. I'm absolutely delighted to be here, particularly on International Women's Day, which is a particularly important day for us all, men, women, everyone. What I thought would be helpful is if I was to start from the very beginning, because when you hear that introduction, automatically people would think that I must have come from a wonderfully great primary school, secondary school, and even college, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I think what I did was a pretty dire secondary school, I must say. I always felt the need to compensate that in my professional life. So I was spurred on to professionally excel because I had this niggling voice in the back of my head that I came from a really poor educational background up to when I joined Westminster. So I always felt the need to compensate that. When I was at secondary school, I decided then that I wanted to become a barrister at the age of 12, and I didn't detract from that. So I set about starting the process, which I knew nothing about how to become a solicitor. The school that I was at didn't naturally encourage that. So from a very early age, I was told to focus on becoming something more, and I quote, realistic for me. This was a careers teacher at the age of 13, I think I was. And they felt that I'd make it as a hairdresser, and I didn't quite agree with that. So from then on, I decided that the only way that I could really achieve my career goals and ambitions was to follow my own plan. So off I went to study A-levels. The college itself wasn't particularly great, but again, it just spurred me on. The law firm that I applied for, I actually got rejected twice. Back in those days, when you did the LLB on the LPC, it was really very competitive. I suppose it still is. So I was used to constant rejections, but that just continued to spur me on because I knew that I wanted to be in the legal profession and I knew that I wanted to do really well. So when I eventually got the interview at Duncan Lewis, I went into the interview and the interview just carried on with the person who was director of the firm telling me all about their story, wasn't really interested in me at all, and proceeded to tell me that they had made director within 5 years of joining the firm. Then the question came to me and they asked, where do you see yourself in 3 years' time? And I said, exactly where you are now. And the look of disgust that I had from my interviewer, I just knew I hadn't got the job because it was just, who do you think you are approach. But fortunately, I worked really hard and I made it within 3 years. In terms of what makes a successful leader, this is really about an individual personal style. Do you want to lead by example, which is something that I do? So I would never really ask a member of my team to do something that I wouldn't do myself or haven't done myself. We all roll our sleeves up and work together as a team, because I firmly believe as a leader, you're only as good as the team that you have behind you. I would never want to be the kind of leader that you're the reason why someone dreads coming into work. I've been there. I refer quite often to the 3 E's of empathy, encouragement, and empowerment. I would would say the struggles would have been dealing with performance targets in a large organisation where there are multiple directors and having to agree on a plan of action, because with so many different personalities on a board, it can be really challenging to get to the resolution. That's the reason why when I left the firm that I trained in after 11 years, and it was a massive firm, I was keen not to grow my practice to a large or a medium-sized firm. I wanted it to be small and boutique because the politics in a larger organisation can be quite challenging. Especially in the work that I do, it's really easy to fall into that mistake of over servicing a client. And in what I do, the more you over service a client, the more they'll expect. So I would always say that never give a client your personal mobile number for a start, and think twice about maybe having WhatsApp or anything that has you 24 hours accessible. Set clear boundaries with your clients or your customers, whoever it is, to say, I am non-contactable on weekends and after 6:30 Monday to Friday, whatever works with you, and stick to it. If you don't and you let it slip, then you can't really blame a client for then contacting you on a weekend. A typical day with me would start with emails coming in from about 3 in the morning. I will then wake up around 5 and skim through my emails. By 8 o'clock, know what I'm dealing with because it's in my Outlook. So for me, the rule of law is never to miss a deadline. And the best advice that I can give anybody, especially with time management, is never ever put a deadline on the day of the deadline. I say to my team, if a deadline is on the 25th, that's the cut-off point. Your deadline in your diary needs to be the 22nd. In case anything happens and someone has to intervene and take over that case, or if there's a mistake that's been made, not that we make mistakes at Amnesty, so I'm just saying, juniors might be slower, there's time to resolve it without it affecting your client.